The cold, metallic clank of the starship's cargo bay doors echoed through the chamber as Ian McTavish stood, clipboard in hand, among rows of containment units. The air was stale, laced with a hint of antiseptic and fear. As a smuggler, Ian was accustomed to the uncomfortable silence that came with such transactions, but today's cargo was different. Today, he was supposed to sell an alien woman and her young daughter. They were the last of their kind, the rare moire from the planet Delphinus, where war had left few survivors. Ian had seen many things in his line of work, but the sight of the mother, Althea, clutching her daughter, Elara, stirred something unfamiliar in him. It was an emotion he had buried deep beneath years of smuggling and shady deals. Althea's eyes met his, a deep violet, shimmering with unspoken pleas. Elara, merely a child, looked around with a mix of curiosity and fear, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. Ian cleared his throat, focusing on the task at hand. He needed to complete the transaction, hand over the moire to the buyer, and collect his payment. It was supposed to be simple. But as he approached them to finalize the checks, Elara whispered something in her mother's ear, causing Althea to look up with renewed hope. Ian pretended not to notice, but the innocence in the child's gaze was hard to ignore. He had seen desperate people before, people who would say anything to save themselves. But this was different. This was pure, genuine fear and hope. "Are they in good health?" the buyer, a burly man named Gorvin, asked, his voice gruff, cutting through the tense air. "Yes," Ian responded mechanically, "they are as promised. Prime condition, no physical defects." Gorvin nodded, his gaze evaluating the pair as if they were livestock. "And the girl? She will survive the journey." Ian hesitated. It was one thing to smuggle artifacts or illegal tech, it was another to stand witness to this. He felt the weight of his conscience pressing down on him. "Yes, she's strong," he found himself saying, his voice quieter than he intended. As Gorvin stepped forward to inspect them closer, Elara recoiled, her small frame trembling. Althea pulled her close, whispering reassurances. Ian watched, a surge of protectiveness rising within him, unexpected and unwelcome. The transaction was nearing completion when Ian heard Elara's soft sobs. Something inside him snapped. He couldn't do this, not to a child. Not anymore. "I can't sell them to you," Ian blurted out, the words leaving his lips before he could stop them. Gorvin turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "I said I can't do this. The deal is off." Ian's voice was firmer now, his decision made. He didn't know what it would cost him, but as he looked at Althea and Elara, he realized he didn't care. The buyer's anger was palpable. "You know this isn't good for your health, McTavish." But Ian was done running from his past, from his conscience. He had made his choice. As Gorvin stormed out of the cargo bay, Ian turned to the moire. "We need to get you out of here," he said, the resolve in his voice surprising even him. "Both of you." Althea's eyes welled up with tears, not of fear, but of gratitude. Ian didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: he was on a new path now, one that he would carve with a clear conscience. As they prepared to leave the starship, Ian felt the weight of the universe on his shoulders, yet somehow, it felt lighter than before. He was supposed to sell them, but instead, he chose to save them. It was the first step towards redemption, and perhaps, towards something resembling a family. In the shadowy corridors of Caliban Station, Ian led Althea and Elara through a maze of dimly lit tunnels, the sounds of their hurried footsteps bouncing off the metal walls. The station, a hub for the galaxy's less savory transactions, was a labyrinth of markets, docking bays, and hideouts. Knowing it like the back of his hand was one thing, navigating it with two fugitives was another. As they moved, Ian's mind raced with plans and contingencies. He needed a safe route out, one that avoided Gorvin's inevitable pursuit. The man was not known for letting go easily, especially not of something he considered his by right of payment. "Stay close," Ian whispered, leading them into a narrower passage that service bots usually frequented. It was less likely to be patrolled, but the risk of running into maintenance crews remained high. Althea, holding Elara close, nodded. Her eyes had adjusted to the dim lighting, her senses sharpened by the urgency of their situation. Despite her obvious fear, there was a steely resolve in her gaze. Elara, on the other hand, looked around with wide eyes, her earlier fear replaced by a child's innate curiosity about the unknown. The trio paused as a shadow loomed ahead. Ian held up a hand, signaling them to stop. He peered around the corner, his heart pounding. It was just a maintenance bot, clattering along its programmed path, oblivious to the human drama unfolding around it. They continued, Ian's relief short-lived as he plotted their next move. They reached a service elevator, its use restricted to station personnel. Ian punched in a code on the pad, the doors sliding open with a hiss. "In here quickly," he urged, glancing over his shoulder. The lift would take them to the docking area where his ship, the Wayfarer, was parked. It wasn't the newest or the fastest, but it was unmarked and untraceable, a perfect ghost in the cosmic sea. As the elevator ascended, the silence was oppressive, filled only with the hum of the lift and the quiet breathing of the moire. Ian watched them, their reflections ghostly in the metallic doors. What was he doing? Smuggling was one thing, aiding fugitives was another. Yet, the sight of Alara's trusting eyes made him push away any second thoughts. The elevator dinged softly, arriving at the docking level. The doors slid open to reveal a deserted platform. The Wayfarer sat quietly in its berth, its hull dull under the flickering lights. Ian ushered them out and towards the ship, his senses on high alert. They were almost there when shouts echoed through the vast space. Gorvan's men. Ian cursed under his breath. "Run," he commanded, breaking into a sprint. Althea clutched Alara's hand, keeping pace with Ian as they dashed towards the ship. Ian unlocked the Wayfarer with a remote, the ramp descending with a welcoming thud. They scrambled aboard, and Ian slammed his palm on the close button. The ramp lifted, sealing them inside just as Gorvan's men appeared at the end of the platform, shouting and brandishing weapons. Breathing heavily, Ian rushed to the cockpit, powering up the engines. The ship vibrated beneath them, a deep growl filling the air as the Wayfarer prepared to defy the gravity of Caliban Station. Althea and Alara strapped themselves into nearby seats, the former's face a mask of determined calm, the latter's filled with wonder at the ship's trembling ascent. As they broke free of the station's hold, stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Safety, for the moment, was theirs. But Ian knew the road ahead was fraught with peril. He glanced back at his unexpected companions, their fate now intertwined with his. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The universe was vast, and their journey, far from over. The stars outside the Wayfarer's cockpit window danced with a cold fire of distant suns, a silent symphony playing across the void of space. Ian kept his eyes fixed on the navigation panel, the coordinates set for a lesser-known nebula that would mask their trail from any pursuers. The engines hummed a low, soothing tone, but the tension aboard the ship was palpable. Althea emerged from the passenger quarters, her posture composed. "Will we be safe there?" she asked, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her fears for herself and her daughter. "We'll be off the main routes, in a sector rarely patrolled," Ian replied without turning, his hands adjusting the ship's course slightly. "It's not a permanent solution, but it'll give us time to think, plan our next move." Alara, her curiosity unfettered by the grim situation, explored the cabin's nooks. Her small hands touched the cold metal surfaces, her eyes wide with wonder at the strange new world she found herself in. It was a stark contrast to the fraught energy between the two adults. The ship's alarm suddenly blared, slicing through the strained silence. Ian stiffened, his eyes darting to the source of the alert. "We've got company," he muttered, tension lining his jaw as he scanned the readouts. A ship, unmarked but unmistakably a hunter, had dropped out of hyperspace and was now on an intercept course. "Can we outrun them?" Althea's voice was tight, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "Not this ship. It's built for stealth, not speed," Ian responded grimly. He thought for a moment, his mind racing through possibilities. "We'll have to hide." He maneuvered the Wayfarer towards a nearby asteroid field, the celestial bodies offering a dangerous but necessary cover. The asteroids, tumbling through space, presented a lethal obstacle course. Ian's hands were steady though, as he weaved the ship through the rocky maze. Behind them, the hunter ship mirrored their path, less nimble but persistent. Ian glanced at the proximity sensors, his brow furrowed. The asteroid field was their best chance to lose the pursuer, but one wrong move could turn their sanctuary into a grave. As they delved deeper into the field, Ian cut the engines, letting the ship drift silently among the asteroids. The only sounds were the occasional metallic pings of small rocks against the Wayfarer's hull and the heavy breaths of its passengers. Althea came forward, standing beside Ian. Her presence was a silent show of support, her gaze fixed on the sensor panel. The hunter ship appeared on the screen, pausing at the edge of the field, its crew likely deliberating their next move. Minutes stretched like hours, the waiting game a trial of nerves. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the hunter ship turned away, retreating back into the void. They had deemed the risk too great. Relief washed over Ian briefly, but he knew better than to let his guard down. "We'll stay here a bit longer, make sure they're really gone," he said, his voice a mix of fatigue and caution. Althea nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Thank you," she whispered, her gratitude sincere and profound. Ian finally allowed himself a moment to relax, leaning back in his chair. The close call had shaken him more than he cared to admit. He turned to look at Alara, who had paused in her explorations to watch the adults, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Seeing her innocent gaze, Ian felt a resolve strengthen within him. He wasn't just running from something, he was protecting these two, come what may. The void around them might be cold and unforgiving, but within the wayfarer, a faint warmth was kindling, a flicker of something like hope. In the dim light of the wayfarer's cockpit, Ian plotted a course toward a small, uncharted planet rumored to be shrouded in dense mists and impenetrable to most sensors. The idea was to lay low, disappear among the whispers of forgotten space tales until they could figure out a more permanent solution. Althea spent hours poring over star maps and data slates, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. Her determination to understand and perhaps contribute to their flight was evident in her focused expression and the meticulous way she organized their findings. "This planet," she pointed out, "has an abandoned outpost. It could provide shelter and possibly some old supplies." Alara, growing more aware of their situation, watched her mother with a mixture of awe and concern. She often sat quietly, coloring or piecing together puzzles that Ian had found in the storage compartments, her way of coping with the constant hum of tension. As they approached the planet, the ship's sensors flickered momentarily, an anomaly caused by the planet's dense atmospheric particles. Ian adjusted the shields, his eyes scanning the gauges closely. "We'll go in under passive scan. It'll keep us off most radars but blind us a bit too," he explained, mostly for Althea's benefit, who nodded in understanding. The descent was rough, the atmosphere buffeting the wayfarer with winds that howled like ancient spirits. Ian's skills as a pilot were put to the test as he maneuvered through violent air currents and electrical storms, his hands steady but his forehead beaded with sweat. They landed with a jolt, the landscape around them a blur of swirling mists and shadowy forms. The planet was alive with the sounds of unseen creatures and the rustle of thick foliage, an eerie symphony that filled the silence following the ship's turbulent entry. Once the engines cooled and the exterior scanners adjusted to the new environment, Ian and Althea ventured outside to inspect the area. The ground was soft, covered in a carpet of moss and leaves, the air thick with moisture and the scent of decay. It was a planet forgotten by time, its secrets cloaked in mist. Althea found tracks leading away from an old structure, partially collapsed but still standing. "Someone's been here recently," she observed, her voice low, mixing with the planet's breaths. Ian followed her gaze, noting the freshness of the marks. "We need to be careful. Could be scavengers, or worse," he murmured, his hand subconsciously resting on the blaster at his side. Inside the structure, they discovered remnants of a recent inhabitant, a makeshift bed, empty food containers, and a few personal items left behind in haste. "Looks like they didn't plan on leaving so quickly," Althea commented, sifting through the items with a careful hand. Ian's attention, however, was drawn to a series of maps spread out on an old table. They detailed other hidden outposts, supply caches, and possible safe routes through the sector. "This could be useful," he said, tracing a route with his finger. As they prepared to return to the ship, a rustling in the nearby underbrush halted them. Ian and Althea exchanged a glance, tensing for confrontation. But out stepped a ragged figure, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I mean no harm," the stranger called out, his voice rough with disuse. "Saw your ship come down. Haven't seen anyone else in ages." Warily, Ian and Althea lowered their weapons, the figure stepping into the light, a man older with a face marked by time and weather, but eyes that spoke of stories and knowledge perhaps vital to their survival. "Name's Torin," he introduced himself, a cautious smile breaking through his grizzled exterior. "I might be able to help you, if you're willing to trust a ghost." Back on the ship, as they discussed their next moves, the inclusion of Torin offered new angles and possibilities. The planet was not just a refuge, it was a crossroad, and each path veiled in mist carried the promise of peril and providence alike. The trio, now with Torin as their guide, delved deeper into the planet's secrets, the dense canopy above weaving a tapestry of shadows that danced with the planet's subtle breezes. The air was thick, filled with the smells of wet earth and rotting vegetation, a testament to the planet's abundant yet hidden life forms. Torin led them through winding paths obscured by overgrowth, his knowledge of the terrain evident in his confident strides and the way he navigated around natural traps and hidden dangers. This planet, Torin began, his voice a mixture of reverence and caution, is known to those who dare tread its surface as Mariah. It conceals more than it reveals. Althea, holding Alara's hand tightly, listened intently, her eyes scanning the environment. Her mind absorbed every detail, from the alien flora to the cryptic sounds that occasionally pierced the silence. Alara's fascination with the new surroundings grew with each step, even the simplest leaf or insect captivated her, bringing brief moments of childlike wonder amidst the prevailing tension. I used to be a cartographer, Torin shared as they took a brief respite under a towering fern-like structure. Mapped out escape routes and safe havens during the wars. Mariah was a sanctuary, a last resort. But not all who came seeking refuge left it. Ian eyed the older man with a mix of suspicion and interest. And what keeps you here, Torin? Why stay in a place forgotten by most? With a sigh, Torin glanced around, as if ensuring the trees themselves weren't listening. Let's just say, my past is as tangled as these woods. Leaving isn't an option, not yet. The group continued, the foliage gradually giving way to a clearing where the remnants of a once thriving outpost stood. Its structures were mostly ruins now, overtaken by the aggressive growth of Mariah's plant life, but one building appeared more intact than the others. This was a research facility, Torin explained, pointing to the dilapidated structure. Abandoned in a hurry when things turned sour. There might be supplies, maybe even some old data worth salvaging. Ian and Althea exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. They approached the facility, its doors hanging off hinges, the interior dark and foreboding. Ian pulled a flashlight from his belt, leading the way as they stepped over debris and scattered papers. The air inside was cooler, the silence more profound. They explored room after room, finding remnants of scientific endeavors, overturned tables, broken glassware, and faded documents littered everywhere. In a locked room, which Ian managed to pry open, they discovered a cache of datapads, their contents potentially valuable. Althea gathered the pads, her fingers brushing over the dusty surfaces. These could tell us more about the planet, maybe even help us navigate the more dangerous regions, she murmured, a spark of hope in her voice. As they prepared to leave the facility, a sudden noise stopped them. Footsteps? No, something else. A low growl echoed through the hollow corridors, sending a shiver down their spines. The group froze, Ian's hand reaching for his blaster. Torin motioned for silence, his expression grave. Not all of Mariah's secrets are friendly. We might not be alone. They retreated slowly, the sound growing fainter as they moved. Once outside, the oppressive atmosphere of the building lifted, replaced by the eerie calm of the forest. Back at the ship, with the datapads in hand, they could begin piecing together a more detailed understanding of Mariah. Each file opened, each map analyzed, brought them closer to mastering the planet's mysteries, even as those very mysteries seemed to watch, wait, and whisper from the shadows. As night fell on Mariah, the forest transformed. The sounds of daytime creatures gave way to the nocturnal symphony of cries and whispers, each note resonating with the planet's ancient mysteries. Inside the Wayfarer, the glow from various screens cast ghostly shadows across the faces of Ian, Althea, and Torin as they delved into the datapad's contents. These records speak of genetic experiments, Althea said, her voice low, threading through the hum of the ship systems. Mariah wasn't just a refuge, it was a lab, a ground for trials on flora and fauna, and possibly. She paused, her eyes flicking to the next screen, on unwilling subjects. Torin leaned over her shoulder, his finger pointing at a series of complex diagrams. They were trying to adapt life forms to extreme environments. But it looks like something went wrong. Very wrong. Ian, whose experience with smuggling often brushed against the darker sides of science, frowned. That would explain the abandoned facilities and the presence we felt. The group pondered the implications. The unsettling growl they had encountered wasn't just a remnant of the planet's natural evolution. It was perhaps a byproduct of abandoned experiments, left to evolve on their own in the wilds of Mariah. We need to be more cautious, Ian decided, his tone firm. This place holds more dangers than just its terrain. As they strategized their next steps, Alara, who had been quietly coloring at a small desk, tugged at Althea's sleeve. "Mommy, the pictures are talking," she whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. Althea knelt beside her, examining the child's drawings. Amongst the typical landscapes and playful scribbles, Ilara had drawn eerie, twisted creatures with too many eyes, their forms sprawling across the pages like shadows come to life. "Ilara, what do you mean they're talking?" Althea asked gently, her heart rate picking up as she tried to understand her daughter's words. "They whisper at night," Ilara replied, her small hand pointing towards the darkened window of the ship. "They don't like the light." Torin and Ian exchanged a glance, the implications clear. If Ilara was hearing or sensing something from the planet's lifeforms, the genetic experiments might have created entities with abilities they had yet to understand. This discovery shifted their perception of the danger surrounding them. Deciding that they needed more information to navigate the threats of Mariah, Ian proposed a plan. "We'll set up surveillance around the ship. Whatever's out there, we'll catch it on camera. We can't be caught off guard." Althea nodded, her maternal instincts in overdrive as she considered her daughter's safety. "And we'll start mapping an emergency exit route from this planet. We need options if things escalate." The following days were spent reinforcing the Wayfarers' defenses and scanning the area. Cameras and sensors, salvaged from the outpost and modified by Ian with Torin's guidance, formed a perimeter around their temporary haven. One night, as the alien moons cast a pale light over the forest, their monitors flickered to life with a sudden alert. The cameras had detected movement, not far from the ship. The footage was grainy, but the outline was unmistakable, something large, moving deliberately through the trees, its form disturbingly humanoid. As they watched the screen, the air in the ship thickened, a sense of being watched crawling over their skin. Mariah was alive, and it was aware of their presence. The whispers Ilara had spoken of were no longer just echoes in the night, they were a warning, a herald of the hidden depths of the planet's secrets waiting to be uncovered. The tension aboard the Wayfarer mounted as the grainy footage played on loop, the shadowy figure lurking just beyond clear visibility. The creature's movements were unsettlingly human, yet its form suggested an amalgamation of genetic improvisation gone awry. "Looks like one of the experiments might have survived. Thrived even," Torin murmured, his eyes not leaving the screen. His voice held a mix of awe and dread, a reflection of the dark possibilities that Mariah harbored. Althea analyzed the video, her mind racing through the genetic profiles and experiment logs they had uncovered. If these creatures adapted to Mariah's environment, they could be anything, even capable of camouflage or, worse. Ian prepared their next move with meticulous care. "We'll need to capture one. Understand what we're dealing with. If Mariah is evolving its own sentinels, we should know how to evade or confront them." They set up a trap near where the creature had been spotted, using a combination of light and sound to attract its curiosity. The trap was simple, a cage with pheromone lures based on the genetic material they'd found at the outpost, and non-lethal traps designed to incapacitate without causing harm. Night fell, a thick veil of darkness enveloping the planet as the twin moons hid behind a swell of storm clouds. The team waited in silence, the tension palpable. Ilara, sensing the gravity of the situation, stayed close to Althea, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. The sensors triggered an alert as something approached the trap. Cameras positioned around the site streamed live footage to the Wayfarers' monitors. The creature emerged from the mist, its form clearer this time. It was indeed humanoid, its skin shimmering with an iridescence that suggested complex genetic modifications. It moved cautiously, sniffing the air, its eyes reflecting a faint glow. As it neared the trap, a sudden sense of unease washed over Ian. "Wait," he whispered, his hand hovering over the control to spring the trap. "Look at its eyes. It's aware." The creature stopped at the edge of the trap, tilting its head as if analyzing the situation. Then, in an unexpected display of intelligence, it spoke, its voice a haunting echo in the still night. "Why do you invade our refuge?" The team exchanged stunned glances. Althea stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We mean no harm. We are lost and seeking refuge ourselves. Can you understand me?" The creature nodded slowly, its gaze piercing. "We are the custodians. This planet is our charge, our home. Your presence disrupts the balance." Ian took a cautious step forward. "We didn't know. We can leave. But we need to understand more about this place, about you, so we can avoid further disruptions." The custodian considered this, its eyes narrowing in thought. "There is much to protect here. The experiments left scars, deep in the fabric of Mariah. We adapted, survived, and now we guard it against more damage. Althea's scientific curiosity surged. Your adaptation is remarkable. Perhaps we can assist each other. We have knowledge and technology that could help in healing Mariah's wounds. A tense negotiation unfolded as the custodian communicated with its unseen counterparts through subtle sounds and gestures. Finally, it turned back to the group. We will observe your actions, determine your truth. For now, you may stay, but do not venture further into the heart of Mariah. The deeper secrets are not for outsiders. Relieved yet wary, the team retreated back to the ship, the agreement hanging in the balance. They were guests, or perhaps prisoners, on a planet alive with secrets and watched over by beings who were themselves the products of forgotten science. The night's revelations had opened a new chapter in their understanding of Mariah, one that promised both alliance and danger in the shadowed depths of the planet. Under the watchful gaze of the custodians, Ian, Althea, and Torin set about strengthening their position on Mariah, careful to adhere to the boundaries set by their hosts. The agreement was fragile, built on a mutual understanding of necessity rather than trust, and both sides knew it. Althea took the lead in establishing a line of communication with the custodians, using the datapads to translate and facilitate discussions. She documented everything, from their language to their social structures, fascinated by their complex society that had evolved from the remnants of scientific ambition and unintended consequences. Meanwhile, Ian and Torin focused on fortifying the Wayfarer, turning it into both a sanctuary and a research base. They installed enhanced sensors around the perimeter, not only to monitor for threats but also to study the planet's unique flora and fauna, which had been shaped by the same forces that created the custodians. Ilara, ever curious, found herself drawn to the custodians. With the innocence of a child and the fearlessness that came with it, she often approached them with questions, her interest unabashed. To everyone's surprise, the custodians responded with a kind of gentle curiosity of their own, particularly one younger custodian named Silas, who became her unofficial guide and protector. One evening, as the twin moons illuminated the misty landscape with a surreal glow, Silas led Ilara to a clearing where bioluminescent plants cast eerie lights across their path. There, he showed her how to communicate with the plants, using gentle touches to stimulate patterns of light. "It's how we learn to survive," Silas explained, his voice soft. "Everything on Mariah is connected. The plants, the animals, us. When the experiment stopped, the planet began to heal, and we evolved with it, part of a new ecosystem." Ilara listened, wide-eyed, absorbing the complexities of life on Mariah that had emerged from chaos and disaster. Her understanding of the world around her deepened, and with it, her respect for the delicate balance of life. Back at the Wayfarer, Althea and Ian watched the interaction via surveillance cameras, the scene unfolding a poignant reminder of what was at stake. "They're not just survivors, they're custodians of a new world," Althea mused, her eyes not leaving the screen. "There's so much we could learn from them, so much they could teach us about resilience and adaptation." Ian nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "And in return, we need to help them protect this world. It's not just about us getting off this planet anymore. It's about ensuring that what happened here doesn't get repeated, doesn't spill over to other worlds." As days turned into weeks, a routine established itself. The team conducted their research, shared findings with the custodians, and slowly, barriers began to erode. The custodians, in turn, shared their knowledge of the planet, teaching them how to identify which plants were medicinal, which areas were safe, and the signs of the planet's deeper, still raw wounds. An unexpected breakthrough occurred when Althea, working late into the night, managed to isolate a sequence in the planet's genetic code that could potentially accelerate the healing of the ecosystem. Excited, she shared her findings with the custodian leaders, proposing a joint project to restore the most damaged areas of Mariah. The proposal was met with cautious optimism. The leaders convened, discussing the potential risks and benefits in their own enigmatic way before giving their assent. The project was a testament to their growing trust and to the benefits of their uneasy alliance. As the project commenced, the team and the custodians worked side by side, blending human technology with the natural magic of Mariah. What started as a mission for survival had blossomed into a shared goal of restoration and understanding, each step forward weaving the humans and custodians closer, their fates intertwined with the living planet that sustained them. As the restoration project progressed, the interactions between humans and custodians shifted from cautious cooperation to a more profound collaboration. The ecosystem of Mariah, with its intricate network of life, began to show signs of rebalancing, responding to the efforts with new growth and renewed vitality. Ian, who had initially been focused on securing a safe exit from Mariah, found himself deeply involved in the ecological efforts. He adapted technology to better suit the needs of the project, creating devices that could monitor environmental changes without disrupting the natural habitat. Althea, her scientific curiosity never sated, worked closely with the custodian scientists, or what passed for scientists among them. Together, they delved into the genetic mysteries of the planet, unlocking protocols that could hasten the recovery of its most fragile regions. Her work, once driven by a need to understand, had transformed into a mission to heal. Ilara and Silas continued to explore the planet, their friendship a bridge between two vastly different cultures. Ilara's fearless inquiries and Silas's patient explanations brought a lighter, hopeful tone to the daily grind of the adults' work. Their bond, innocent and free of the burdens of leadership, reminded everyone of the stakes involved, not just survival, but the flourishing of life in all its forms. Meanwhile, Torin found his own role as a mediator expanding. His understanding of both human and custodian temperaments allowed him to smooth over misunderstandings and facilitate deeper discussions about the planet's future governance. His past as a cartographer, once focused on escape routes, now served to map out a sustainable coexistence. One day, as the group assessed a newly revitalized area, a rare event occurred. The planet itself seemed to respond directly to their efforts. A grove of trees, long dormant, burst into bloom with vibrant colors that had no equivalent in the human visual spectrum. The custodians called it the bloom of acknowledgement, a sign that Mariah accepted their efforts and was beginning to trust again. This phenomenon sparked a celebration among the custodians, a festival of lights and sounds that they invited the humans to participate in. The event was unlike anything the team had ever experienced, filled with luminescent displays and harmonic tones generated by the flora and fauna themselves, orchestrated by the custodians. During the festival, Althea and Ian stood side by side, watching the display. "It's beautiful," Althea whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "It's as if the planet is alive, conscious even." Ian nodded, his eyes reflecting the light show. "Maybe it is, in its own way. We're used to thinking of planets as just rocks or ecosystems, but Mariah is something different." As the celebration wound down, the custodians formally acknowledged the humans' role in the healing process. In a ceremony laden with symbolism, the leaders presented the team with crafted artifacts, each imbued with materials from the healed lands, a token of unity and gratitude. The partnership had grown beyond mere survival tactics or scientific curiosity. It had evolved into a shared custodianship, a mutual guardianship of a world that had been scarred by ambition but was finding new life through cooperation and respect. In the quiet that followed the festival, as the team gathered in the Wayfarers' common area, a sense of accomplishment mingled with a newfound responsibility settled over them. They were no longer just visitors on Mariah, they were part of its community, its ecosystem, its ongoing story of recovery and resilience. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time, it felt like a path they traveled together, a delicate balance of give and take that held the promise of a sustainable future. As the seasons on Mariah changed, so did the landscape of cooperation between the custodians and the humans. The successful restoration projects had not only revitalized large areas of the planet, but also solidified a unique bond between the two species, each learning and adapting from the other. The final project meeting was held in a newly flourishing grove, where the air was rich with the sense of blooming flora. Althea, her datapads and samples now filled with collaborative research findings, shared the successful outcomes and future plans for continuous environmental monitoring and adaptation. Ian, who had spent much of his life navigating the darker corners of the galaxy, found a new purpose in the stewardship of Mariah. His thoughts, once preoccupied with escape routes and survival, now focused on legacy and continuity. "We've built something here that goes beyond survival," he remarked during the meeting. "It's about leaving a place better than we found it, for future generations, whether they be human or custodian." Ilara, growing up amidst the wonders of Mariah, had become a living bridge between the two cultures. Her ease with the custodian language and customs brought a joyful, unifying energy to the community. With Silas by her side, she planted a ceremonial tree in the grove, symbolizing the ongoing growth of their interwoven lives. Torin, reflecting on his role in this evolving tapestry, documented the history of their endeavors. His maps and charts, once tools of navigation and escape, now told the story of a path to mutual respect and shared guardianship. "Every line I draw now speaks of connection, not division," he shared with the group, his voice tinged with emotion. The custodians, for their part, had embraced the humans as allies. The leader of the custodians, a wise being named Thalia, spoke eloquently of the lessons learned. We were guardians of a broken world, but you showed us that healing was possible, not just for the land but for ourselves. As the meeting concluded, the community gathered to witness the activation of a beacon, a symbol of hope and a signal to the universe that Moriah was a planet reborn. The beacon, powered by renewable technologies developed through their joint efforts, emitted a gentle pulsing light that mirrored the bioluminescent rhythms of the planet. That night, under the stars of Moriah, the group celebrated their achievements with a feast that blended Earth recipes with custodian delicacies, a testament to their shared culture and friendship. Music, laughter, and stories filled the air, weaving a tapestry of memories that would be cherished for generations. In the quiet moments of the evening, Althea and Ian stood apart, looking up at the beacon's light as it danced with the stars. "What now?" Althea asked, her voice soft but hopeful. Ian smiled, his gaze reflective. "Now we continue to grow, to learn. Moriah is our home, and its story is just beginning. We have a responsibility to this planet, to each other, and to those who will come after us." As the celebration continued around them, the beacon's light stretched into the cosmos, a symbol of peace and a beacon of new beginnings. Moriah, once a place of last refuge, had become a beacon of hope, not just for its inhabitants, but as a testament to what could be achieved when different beings united for a common cause. In this newfound harmony, the seeds of tomorrow were sown, promising a future where the guardianship of Moriah was shared, cherished, and celebrated, a perpetual promise to the universe, a commitment to nurture, protect, and respect the delicate balance of life.